All right, welcome back to Sunrise Daily. We're coming to you live from Kaduna, where the Kaduna Investment Summit is holding 5.0. That's how they call it, actually. So we've got two people joining us here today to kick off shedding light on what to expect this morning. Umar Aboke is Executive Secretary, Kaduna Investment Promotion Agency. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here.
All right, we also have Dr. Zaid Abubakar, who is Executive Chairman, Kaduna State Internal Revenue Service. Thank you for coming on as well today.
Good morning. It's my pleasure for being here.
Okay, so CADInvest 5.0. Let me start with you. What do we expect? What should people expect as we go on today?
It's, first of all, of course, it's a new normal. We're doing it virtually, but we're excited it's also virtually because what we have now is we have an audience globally from across the world. We would want to showcase what Kaduna has done with a lot of reforms in the business space to show the world that we're really ready for business, a lot of work in the infrastructure space, a lot of work with the agricultural environment. So it's really showcasing how far Kaduna State has come with ensuring that the environment is fit for business.
And how have you been able to connect CADInvest, your activities, with the people of the state? How does the indices show its direct impact on the people?
I think one of the critical things is even if we go across the local government, we've clearly seen some economic growth. We've seen the purchasing power of people increase because these investments, a lot of our investments are really taken to the people. A lot of them are done within the local governments, and especially with our agricultural investments, we always try to ensure that we carry the people along. They own the investment and they have a stake in it. There's a lot of benefit for them.
You know, just one more thing. In the tech world, 5.0 means you had like 4 upgrades from 1.0 to 2.0, now 5.0. And the theme is infrastructure, industrialization, and innovation. 3 I's. Why?
Like I said earlier, this is riding on the former four summits. Yeah. We had opened up Kaduna for business, we had partnerships for businesses, we had signed our service charter. So this is really crystallizing on the first 4 and showing people that, hey, this is the way to go. Infrastructure is very critical to every investment in the state. You need to have the necessary infrastructure for investments to come. And we also know that industrialization brings the most economic growth, creates the necessary jobs, so we must promote that. We must try to have a conversation around there to ensure that we're really set to get those industries going. And of course, innovation is the way to go across every sector.
Well, it also involves money. Yeah. That's where Dr. Zed comes in here.
Yeah.
So in terms of the figures, how have you felt? Because we see some figures, quite interesting figures, how you've been able to grow the revenue for the state and many, because I think from 2014 to 15, a little shaking, 9.5%, but 2015, that picked up. Yeah. Ever since you've not done badly. How did you achieve some of those?
Well, thank you for that question. I think it all started in 2016 when the revenue reform agenda was launched. And the major output of that revenue reform agenda was the emergence of Kaduna State Tax Codification and Consolidation Law. And that law provides for the foundation that we see the successes we achieved today. That law prohibits cash collection, so all payments for government revenues must go to the bank. You either use the bank branch or use any electronically means of making payments. They also made a single agency to be the only agency responsible for collection and accounting of all government revenues, which is KADARES, that is Kaduna State Internal Revenue Service. Then it also codifies all the revenue heads in the state. That is, beside revenues collected or taxes collected by Kaduna State Internal Revenue Service, the law also codifies other revenue heads that comes from other NDAs. So in a particular basket, you see what is coming in from each of the agencies, and you'll be able to account for it. So a lot of leakages have been blocked, and that is why we've been able to achieve this particular feat you're talking about, the successes we recorded from 2015 to 2020, now to 2019.
And it's interesting, I mean, 44 billion last year. I think that's about 400% increase from 2015. So I know that this year has been quite tricky. We've not seen the figures for this year, but what's the target? If you did 44 billion last year, I'm thinking maybe 55 billion or even more this year.
Yeah, that was the ambitious plan, so to say. Initially, at the beginning of 2020, we had an ambitious plan of collecting close to 60 billion. But as God had it, we had pandemic around March, and that made most of the states review their target downward. Kaduna State initially we had an official target of 45 billion, but because of the pandemic, it was reviewed to around 29 billion. But as we speak today, we have met that particular target, the reviewed target. But as a service, we are determined to achieve the original target of 45 billion. If not even surpass it.
That would be interesting. There are a couple of dots I'd like you to connect for me, but let me take that up with Madam. A large chunk of business investment in any environment will be that of MSMEs, and I'm wondering how friendly the investment environment is for the micro, small, and medium enterprises. When we talk about MSMEs, most of the time we're talking about the SMEs. We're not talking about the micros, which are a significant number.
Yeah.
What's the incentive for them to do business, and how friendly is the environment? I know he will go for them to get his revenue, but how are you able to encourage investment in a way that it's sustainable?
Okay, I think one of the first things that we have done for us as a state, as an investment promotion agency, is to also ensure that we create linkages between our corporate names and our MSMEs, so that the MSMEs can feed and be able to supply into the corporate names. The other thing for us as a state is that we have actually created a Ministry of Business, Innovations and Technology, which really caters for the needs of the MSMEs. Very recently, we have also embarked into an e-commerce project for the state, whereby we would get all the MSCs on that platform. We would try and also get them financing. We're working with them to ensure that they access a lot of the financing options that are available across the development partners, across other banks in Nigeria. And then we also have the Microcredit Board working with them to structure their businesses to ensure that they're registered properly. We're holding their hands and getting them to do proper registrations, because we realize that is really a hindrance to them. But like I said, most importantly, the creation of the linkages between them and the corporate names helps a lot in ensuring that they're developed and they're trained in
and what then are the incentives for them tax-wise? I know you go for them, there is no doubt about that. But at the federal level, the federal government had through the Finance Act and a number of other instruments, reduce the financial burden on the MSMEs. Is there any such incentive for the small businesses?
Yeah, of course there is. When we have new startups coming into the states, Kadipa, the investment promotion agency, we give about a month or years for them to really be back in business, to commence the business. For us in the service, we allow them that moratorium or grace period to pick up the business before we go after them. So that is part of the incentive we give to the small and medium scale enterprises. At least you have a year or two for you to really put your business in shape before you begin to pay taxes. And to add to that, most of these startups do not, at the beginning, may not really have a standard and formal accounting system in place. So Kaduna State, we are fortunate to have domesticated the presumptive tax, especially for those ones that are not really formalized. So the presumptive tax provide for tax tables, a kind of schedule, and dividing the businesses into categories based on their strength and capacity and sizes. So, and the amount is fixed. It removes subjectivity from the part of the tax collectors. So for micro, this is the amount. For the medium, this is the amount. And for the macro, the amounts are all stated in the tax law. Okay. So these are the kind of incentives we provide to them.
Forgive me, I wanted you to connect a dot for me. She spoke about, Chamberlain asked you and you spoke about the increase in the IGR. Yeah. That's been quite significant. It has to be commended, no doubt about that. Yeah. But then with that increase also came some other issues. I'm wondering how sustainable that will be in the light of the debt burden that the state also has to bear. I know that as far as IGR is concerned, as far as revenue is concerned, there is a way to make sure that this is also, plowed back into the debts and all of that. So yes. If we have this kind of situation on our hands, and I'm wondering if after this government leaves office, how sustainable is the debt burden of the state compared to the IGR?
Well, I think the IGR growth is going to be sustainable. For us as a service, we have done a projection of close to 10 and 20 years. We come up with what we call the medium tax plan, revenue collection plan, and the long-term medium collection plan. We've looked into all the revenue heads we have in the state and tried to see how each revenue head is going to perform in the next 10 years and how each revenue head is going to perform in the next 20 years. By the end of 2024, we expect to collect close to 100 billion, which is sustainable looking at all the revenue heads. And by the end of 2030, we expect to collect close to 200 billion. So it is not, the instantaneous increase we are concerned with. We are looking at the projections and the possibility of sustaining those increases in the IGR.
I'm just sorry to just come in because, I mean, this is not a follow-up though. Okay. I'm just bringing into this steel, the African Steel Initiative that the groundbreaking occurred. That's quite ambitious, especially when you see Ajakuta is supposed to bounce back, Delta Steel. So all of those are supposed to come back. What is the target here?
Okay, so we have very huge deposits of iron ore in Kaduna State, and this is what African Steel is taking advantage of in the Gujeni village in Kagarko. They are doing an integrated steel plant, and upon completion, it's going to be the largest steel manufacturing plant in sub-Saharan Africa. And it's also going to be the first plant to produce liquid steel. Liquid steel is the new age steel that's required to produce all sorts of machineries, utensils and all that, because it's liquid, so you can just turn it into anything with all its complexity. So that's really African steel. I think they've taken advantage of the enabling business environment in Kaduna State and the fact that we also have these deposits that are available to them. We've also taken advantage of the relationship with them because we presently signed 2 other JVs to pursue investments and mining in other minerals that we have in Kaduna State.
Well, this is a follow-up question now. You talked about steel, right? And I recall during the first edition of Kadinvest, you said you launched, I think, a state development plan 2016 to 2020. And I think the plan was to bring in about 800 billion naira worth of private investment into the state. So you've talked about steel. What other areas? I know you have comparative advantages in some areas. So what other areas did you get those investments and how much have you gotten?
We have priority sectors across, we prioritize many sectors, agribusiness, ICT, housing, manufacturing, and some others. And we've actually had investments coming in, especially in agriculture and agribusiness, in ICT, in housing, and of course in renewable energy, because that's very critical to this. Presently, we have about $800 million worth of investments that are live across the state, and another 2.1 billion naira in announcements that we hope would be over the next 2 to 5 years.
I know the ease of doing business has rated Kaduna high in some areas, and I'm thinking, not all areas really, when you look at that report, there are still some areas that need work. So the idea is, what are you doing to develop those areas? Because doing business is a whole length, not just a few things. So what are you doing in those areas?
We have the Ease of Doing Business Committee in Kaduna State that sits every week alongside all the MDs, service delivery MDs in the state. And this is to review their processes and procedures, to see what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong, where we need to go. Our aim is to automate all of our service delivery MDAs. Once we automate them, they're online real time. You can access them from anywhere and you can actually apply for these services. Furthermore, as an investment promotion agency, we have a dashboard within Kadiba that we monitor the service deliveries of these agencies. And we encourage our investors to come to this dashboard and come to us and let us know where the bottlenecks are, what we can do differently. So for us, it's a lot of engagement between the agencies. There's a lot of interagency collaborations among us to get everybody to understand the need to really be up there and ensure that we continue where we are first, we retain our rankings. Where we're lagging, we actually improve on those rankings.
You already referenced, this is a follow-up. So you already referenced agriculture the other time, but I don't want you to spade over it. We all know that Kaduna State is very big on agroeconomy. Is there anything in Kadinvest 5.0 that prioritizes agroeconomy and integrates it, especially with the people?
Absolutely. We have plenary that's going to talk about agriculture, and we call it Rethinking Agriculture. And really, this is taking agriculture and the agricultural value chain to a whole new level, discussions around what do we do differently, how do we ensure that we continue to take advantage of this comparative advantage that we have in the state and take it to the next level.
And then there is the innovation part of today, of this event. With that comes the youth.
Absolutely.
So I don't know how the much older people will really be able to sink into that. What's the plan to integrate them sustainably?
We have a lot of programs in Kaduna State presently that seeks to develop innovations and technology and has engaged the youth. I think that there's one animation video that we've been showing about card investors online is really from one of our tech people within the hubs that we have. We also have a plenary on technology and innovation in business, and this is really where we speak to the world about all of the innovations that we have within the state, all of the initiatives, the programs that we have to drive this, to ensure that we train our youths in this fourth generation area of expertise where skills are required.
You know, Dr. Zaid, the law sometimes plays catch up with technology.
Yeah.
And when it has to do with tax, I know you have future plans. What is the thinking about how do we tax this sector, this innovative sector, the ICT sector? What's the thinking?
Well, for us, we've been researching to see how to really capture the e-commerce businesses, the ICT, because a lot of businesses are done online without most of the state IRS having the technology and wherewithal to really tax them. And the only way forward for each of the IRS going forward is for them to leverage on technology to be able to capture those transactions online in real time as they happen. And that is exactly what we're doing here in Kaduna. You know, of recent, we've had these new businesses like sport betting, gaming, and rest, which are done online. You also have some kind of tradings that are happening online. So if an IRS is just sitting there without innovating, without thinking through on new technologies, a lot of businesses will be taken without actually getting the right amount of taxes. Here in Kaduna, we're already doing a lot of things as far as technology is concerned to be able to tap and collect the necessary amount of money we need to collect from these businesses.
I know that most times, I mean, when we speak to some of them, they just tell you, look, why would government want to come and tax them? What does government provide for that particular group of people, for instance? So when you go to tax them, they could tell you that.
Yeah.
What are you providing for me? Why should you tax me?
We are providing the market for them already. Because for them to do the business here in Kaduna, be it online or physically, the market is already existing in Kaduna. For providing the market, we need to collect the taxes.
No, you have to factor in those people who are unbanked and untaxed already.
Yeah.
What's the plan to educate them and to bring them into the fold?
Well, fortunately for us in the state, we have a committee already, Financial Inclusion Committee, that is working tirelessly to see that the unbanked community are brought into the formal, way of doing businesses. And to add to that, we at the service are also leveraging on that particular initiative to go to the hard to tax and hard to reach areas using our mobile kits, especially the POS and the POS agents, to collect the necessary amount of taxes. And on that, we try to provide tax identification numbers and other identity numbers so that we can capture them and collect taxes going forward.
All right, I hope they accept your marketing. They're providing the markets for them. Because, I mean, there's electricity component, there's the ICT sector, what they need to put in.
Well, when I made mention of the market, I was specifically talking about the online businesses. Because for you to do business online, you may not necessarily need maybe the roads, you may not necessarily need so we're doing a lot with that. Okay. So I was specifically talking about the online businesses.
But the thing is, of course, you can always get across them online and listening to the seminar when it starts, investment seminar, so you can get a lot more understanding about the policy direction and the thinking of the government for CanInvest 5.0. But we have to thank you, Dr. Zaid Abubakar and Umar Boke. Thank you for talking to us today, and all the best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, we're back in a moment. Stay with us.